Hello everyone! Today we're going to be learning how to use references to shade a gacha character. So I got my gacha character here. You can pick any, it doesn't matter. She can be in any pose or whatever. And before we begin, we have to do some things to the character. So one, I would highly recommend turning off the highlights so it can make our time editing her easier. And another thing is for us to turn off the outline feature so that, again, it's easier for us to edit her. Now, if your character has something like a little weird going on here, like this little star, for example, you can just ignore that. I would highly recommend keeping it there as it can be used as a little outline of knowing where to shade with that star. So we're going to turn off our outlines now, and we're going to then take a picture of her. Actually, if we want better quality, let's actually go to our body and rotate her around like vertically, and I mean horizontally or something. And after she's turned off like that, turn around like that, we can take her in the studio and we can make her a little more bigger. And that way, we can click on, oops, my bad. We can click on, I have no clue. Okay, I'll click on her, Vivi, right here. And then we can just click on view, and then we can take a nice, good quality picture of her. After that, I'm going to go home, and I am going to quickly reset this because I genuinely don't feel like redoing this later. Can turn the outlines back on, oops. And now we are ready to edit. So we're going to exit out there and go over here. The artist we are going to be referencing today, their name is Mitara. I think that's how you say it. They're on Twitter. Go check them out because this artwork is not mine, but we will be using it for educational purposes through studying and learning what we can learn from that art piece. So we're going to go to our photo library and we're going to get out our gacha edit. We're going to make it a little more bigger, and after that, I'm just going to press the check mark. Nope. And we're going to go to selection and we're going to bucket all of this. So you want to bucket all of the empty parts and like see how I'm bucketing the background and stuff. This is the stuff we want to get rid of because they're not included in our edit. Once you're done doing that, then we can just click on layer 2. And we can click on this little box over here, right there, which is called the clear layer button. As you can see, it clearly cleared our layer. After that, we want to go to our lasso, and then we want to hit on this little empty box over here called remove selection. So we have removed our selection, we're no longer selecting it, therefore we can press on this little transform tool and then rotate her however we like. So I think I'm gonna keep her around to this degree. Let's see. Alright, that seems to be in position enough. So now let's start shading. We're going to add a new layer on top of her, and we're going to clip it. And then we're going to just set our blending mode to multiply. And right now, we're going to exit out of here, and we're going to start studying how the shadows were done on here. And we're really going to not do anything nice or fancy. We really just want to grab the base of the shadows. I'll show you what I mean later on. So right now, I know that my light source is going to be right here. So I'm going to draw a little sun. So here is my light source, and we know it's coming down on her in that direction, as it is in the photo, because we can see that here is the little lamp source, and then we can see how the light is actually shining upon Sonic right here. And that is exactly what I want to do here. So we're going to grab our multiply layer already, and we're going to change the color. We're just going to change it to some dark shadow. Like, it doesn't matter what color you choose. We just want to get the shadows in. So I'm going to go to my brushes, and I'm going to choose a fade watercolor. You can choose any brush. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you get the base in. Before we begin shading, as you can see, all the light sources are over here as I'm highlighting them. So if they are over there, then we should treat Vivi's head as if it were like a spear. So basically, instead of just doing this, like just dead on straight, making it all liney and stuff, we want to actually add some curves, because if we were to shade a ball right now, oh gosh, as you can see how I'm adding curves rather than just going in a linear line. What this does is that it allows for my ball to look more spherical, especially when I start adding points of reflectance here. So the first part we're really trying to get out of the way right now are our shadows. So let's continue on with that. If you want to get back your color, because clearly I have red here and that's not that color, you can just quickly make this normal mode, eyedrop it, and then go back to multiply mode, and then you can continue coloring from there. As for the legs, you want to use this spherical ball I made here as a metaphor for them. Not a metaphor, just like more as of a reference. So instead of doing like straight strokes like this, or trying to get it all over like this and that shading does look nice, but again, I will emphasize, we really want to get the base shadows in. We don't want to try adding more detail like this. That can come at a later time. I'm going to go back to my multiply layer and continue. So for the arms, I'm going to put more shadows over here, make it a little roundish to emphasize that, hey, she is not a 2D piece of flat paper. And for the legs, we're going to kind of give them that little curve over there. And for things like the skirt, we want to think back to how it would have been on the character. As you can see, the skirt over here, let me zoom up. As you can see, her skirt has these lines that are separating the individual pleats, and you really want to have those individual pleats in your head. You want to keep that in mind, because then that will act as a guide of knowing where to shade. So if you're still lost on this, I'm literally mean just draw out the pleats, or you could just imagine them, and then you could easily add in your shadows here. And then that is going to allow you to shade in your pleats. Again, nothing fancy. We really just want to get the base here. Another thing with shadows I would like to mention is how they're not always going to be like this. They're not going to be flat like that. You kind of want to add some scaling down of it, like down in this direction of it, since our light is up here. The shadow isn't going to be straight, horizontal like that, or it's just going to be on the edges. No, it's going to have some sort of angle since the light is coming from here. So make sure to have some angles in your drawing. As we can also see with this artwork, this shadow is not going like this. It's not being put against his face like this. It's in fact being extruded this way at an angle, because the light source is coming down like this. Therefore, when it affects the spear over here, which its light source is over here, it doesn't mean that it's going to go straight down, or it's going to be like, oh, it's going to be like, hold on, it's going to be like this. Oh gosh. It doesn't mean it's going to be just like this. You're going to have some roundness with it, because as we all know, spears are round. They are spherical. They have some curves. So let's go back to our shadow layer and continue shading. I'm going to regain my colors back, and I'm going to continue shading from here. So again, I really want to try to have some curves over here, and yeah. Now for this, we know the head. If we look at the drawing, it seems that Sonic's shadow is all the way over here. So if it is, considering how big his head is, the volume of it, it's probably, that's why it's covering all his body. If we consider how big a Gacha Life head would be, I mean, we know that our Gacha Life head is around this big. It is kind of close to the size of our body. And because of that, I'm going to assume that our shadows are really just all the way over here. It's not going to cover it entirely since this object over here are kind of close to the same size. So that means when we start shading this, we're going to go at an angle, but it's not going to completely go down as we see in the Sonic artwork. Because usually Sonic's head is really big. That's why it's going to foreshadow that completely. In our Gacha character, her head is like a little more relative to her body. So we're just going to go to that amount rather than all the way down here. We're not going to shade all the way down there. Then we're going to continue shading. And again, a Gacha Life's head is more like a spear, even if you were to model in 3D, which is why we're trying to mimic this little spear over here on it. And then we can add in little details such as adding shadows over here. And then over here, again, shadows come at an angle. So we don't want to do this. We don't want to make it straight like that. We want to kind of go down at an angle a little. And over here, you want to pretend that all the outlines are over here so that you know where to guide your shadows. Make it as messy as you want because we're going to make it much more refined later on. Alright, so it seems that we are done placing our shadows. Now, I'm going to quickly troubleshoot a few things before we move on. If your artwork is looking more something like this, where you tried following what I was doing, but it doesn't look like you've been trying to shade all corners like this. If your artwork looks something a little more to this extent, right here, compared to something like this, some things you can do or try to fix your understanding of are some of these things, such as, like, instead of, like, sticking to this rule where you usually just shade the entire hand and think that the light source is coming over here, just try to get out of your boundaries, erase all of that, and try to only put it on one side. That way, it will further emphasize, as we see over here, of where our light source really is. If you tend to be that person who's like, oh yeah, I love shading, and you just tend to go on the outlines of stuff. I mean, I used to shade like this as well, but one thing it's also made me realize is that it lacks volume. It doesn't show me exactly how my character is more 3D-like. It makes it a little more 2D-like, and that's one thing I recommend avoiding. So instead of doing that, just try to stick to painting on one side rather than like all the way over here and then doing that. No, just stick to wherever the shadows are. If the shadows are over here, then the shadows are over there. You don't need to go out and do this. It's unnecessary. We can also see this being done with the Sonic art over here, because as you can see, the artist did not decide to, oh, I'm going to take a blue and I'm going to start shading over here because the ear's over there, and then like shading all around his face and stuff. Oh gosh, shading all around his face with a darker hue. I mean, although this is like nice things to do, do you see how it lacks a little more volume as I begin to shade it extra with all these extra details that are a little unnecessary? And what I mean by unnecessary details is instead of sticking to the little spear we have over here, we're just shading in the outer parts instead. And in my opinion, I don't think that really makes much of a spear, other than it just, like, it doesn't really make much of a spear. Even if I were to try to make it more smooth like a spear, it doesn't really make it 3D. It doesn't make it pop out. Again, this is something I used to do for many years. If you have been doing something like this, it's perfectly fine. You could still fix it. Or if you still want to keep doing it, well, you do you. Art is subjective. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Anyways, that's how I think one should do lighting. I'm going to turn on the multiply layer, and I'm going to decrease it so that we can get a better sense of how this will look a little more like this. After that, we are going to then map out our lighting. So we're going to clip that and we're going to make our layer add. For lighting, instead of just like doing one of these numbers where back then I would used to like make this yellow and then I just start shading the outside like this. Instead of doing that, let's exemplify that this thing is a 3D character. As we can see with Mitara's art, we can see how 3D it looks. And this is simply because Mitara did not decide to do one of these numbers where they were like, oh yeah, let's just make all of this like go to the side and just make all the lines straight. Instead of doing that, they decide to actually have the light beam in a little here, as you can see. So instead of going in this direction with my red pen, it's actually going more in this direction downwards. And again, the only reason why they're doing this is because if you are to paint the light part of a sphere, you see how I'm not doing this? I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. That doesn't make it pop. If you really want to make a sphere pop, all you gotta do is just this. And then that is exactly what makes the sphere pop out a little more. It looks more like a sphere compared to something like this, where it's all over here, and then you got the little light over here. Now, of course, you could do this sort of shade at a certain angle, but trying to apply this sort of logic to everything is just not going to make your lighting pop out. I really want to emphasize that because this is a mistake I used to make a lot, and sometimes they still do make it, but again, I still have to go back and fix it. Anyways, let's learn how to correctly do lighting through studying the Sonic art once more. So as you can see, it's kind of like going down there, over here, like rather than just being on the side, being on the edge. And that's exactly what we want to do with this. So instead of doing this, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our lasso and we're going to actually kind of copy that. So you see how I'm kind of making this blob over here rather than just trying to get the edge. I don't want to get the edge. I want to make a blob over here. And then we're going to grab our brush and we're going to make a triangle. And then we're going to make it kind of a little saturated orange. And then make it a little more saturated orange reddish peach, I guess. We're trying to copy the lighting of this picture for context. So that's why I'm doing that. And we're just going to airbrush this. Like, we're going to airbrush heavily over here. And then we're going to kind of get the top over here. Let's look back at the Sonic thing for reference. It seems that the light is more present over here compared to over here. So that's why I want to do that. And then we're going to get rid of that lasso. And then we're going to move... Actually, don't get rid of the lasso. Go back. We forgot one more thing. To balance out the orange over here, we're going to make it a little more yellow so that it can look a little more like the Sonic art. Maybe not yellow. I mean, if it looks... I mean, this kind of look... The lighting does kind of look a little yellow, so maybe? I don't know. I think the lighting's a little more blue. I can't exactly tell. I mean, sometimes I'll be in peril about, like, whether or not the lighting's blue, so usually I just probably stick up red. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe we could add a little blue to this and play around with the lighting a little. Because I want to try to get to this more desaturated lighting. Not desaturated lighting. It's just more like as if Sonic had white lights put on him. And because I can't exactly define the color, I'm just going to assume the color's a little more like this. As you can see, I decided to use a little light blue and then maybe a little yellow. This is something really you just gotta play around with. There's not really a straight way to this other than copying it from the artwork. Anyways, let's get rid of that lasso. I know it looks really ugly right now, but we can always decrease the saturation. And as you can see, this actually kind of looks a little more like the artwork over here, where it kind of has that desaturated white lighting, and the same over there. And let's continue copying the lighting. So I'll go over here on these hands. Again, I really want to get all that area over there, and then we'll start out with peach orange. And then we're going to make our way all the way up to like that desaturated white lighting and stuff. And the same thing goes over here. We're gonna get the legs. Actually, we're gonna kind of go against the shadow because I like to emphasize the lighting is a little bit harder over here. So let's make that peach. Let's do that. And then we're going to make that a little lighter blue to give off that desaturated lighting look. Remove that, and as you can see, this is getting a little more 3D. It's a little more 3D compared to doing something like this mistake I used to make. And do you now understand why I'm not asking you to not do something like I'm just going to shade in the outlines of the legs like this? No, please don't do that. It's going to ruin the 3D effect. Anyways, we're going to continue shading. One thing that we also have to keep in mind is if we look back to Mitara's artwork, that it's not going to be, like, if I were to turn up this multiply mode, see how the lighting's pretty consistent over here? One thing that we will be focusing a little more later on into the video is we're going to be learning how to give our lighting different values and stuff to make it a little more, like, realistic and as if it's actually in the shadow. And you see, I kind of did that over here, and you see how it actually looks a little more like it's actually in the picture compared to this? Right. Now, why the heck am I pointing that out? Well, we're going to do the same thing with lighting. So I'm going to go back to my lighting layer, and I'm going to lasso it. I'm going to kind of do the same thing over here, except it's kind of going to be on the edge over here, because I know that the light isn't that hard over there. And we don't want hard edges like this anymore. We kind of want to just make it a little more chill. Again, we're sticking to peach, except we're going to grab our brush once and like go over it once, two, and make it a little less than that. We go to blue, and that's pretty much all we're doing for the lighting over there. Alright, we will take our blur tool and we're going to just blur this a little, because again, this is actually supposed to be more concentrated than that over there. And that's how we kind of get our quote-unquote 3D look. Now, there's not a lot left to do with lighting. I think we could probably take the lasso and kind of give her hands a little new look over here, making it peach and making it actually look like it's clamping in rather than looking like a flat pancake as it is right now. So I'm going to shade the end of this, and then we're going to kind of give that more of a gradient look. Go over here, make that light blue to give that its white desaturated lighting. Lasso it. And although if it looks dissatisfying and stuff, you could always just cut it and then paste it and make it the same blending mode and then play around with the opacity over here. And then it can look a little more satisfying. Now I know this isn't that satisfying, but we will fix it later on. Actually, I know why it doesn't look satisfying. I probably have to do in these numbers where I lasso it and then I shade on the other side, because I want to try to give it the same effect that I gave it exactly down here. So yeah, maybe that's what I need to do. Alright, let's unlasso that. Okay, that actually looks a little more satisfying. See how a little more 3D of an actual fist it looks like? So that's pretty much the point I wanted to get across. So now we're going to grab another clipping and we're going to set the layer to multiply. And this is where we're going to be kind of giving it our character a little more detail. So I'm going to lasso this and I'm going to make her fist a little more 3D. Make this a little more pinkish. Actually a little more red. Let's see. So this is a little between orange, red, and blue, because Sonic's blue. His color is going to reflect upon his skin. So I'm probably just going to stick to red then. Get out of that, and we're going to decrease it until it looks a little more 3D. And as you can see, that looks a lot more 3D than it needs to be. Well, anyways, take this over here. Alright, so now we're going to be moving on. And we're going to go back to our original shadow layer mode, and we're going to start making the lighting a little more realistic. As you can see, the values of shadows tend to change a lot here. We got a little blur here, we got a little hard lighting here, and that is exactly what we're going to do next. So we know that her hairs, if we go back to Gacha Club, her hairs are obviously going to have value. If you were to model this in 3D, obviously the hairs, they definitely have volume. They're not going to be flat, they're going to be round. And this is where we get to add a little more detail. So we're going to grab our eraser and we're going to start adding in hard shadows to show our light source. Again, this does not need to be perfect. None of this needs to be perfect. Just do the messiest job you can and keep adding on. And it's going to look good at the end of the day. Just trust the process. So let's add in some light sources, or like clean up some shadows, or add in more detail if we need to. There is not a lot of detail left for me to add here, so I'm just going to leave it be. Now we're going to start blurring in things. Actually, one thing I gotta do is I gotta make sure that I include some of the face line here. I'm gonna decrease opacity a little and do one of these numbers. Do one of these numbers because I don't want the light to be heavily shining on her. Again, gradients as you see here. So we're gonna do the same thing to the outer side, except the only thing is you can kind of barely see it. Maybe. If you can't get the exact right lighting when you erase, it doesn't matter. We'll just draw over it later. Anyways, we're going to be taking our brush and we're going to be grabbing our hard brush and kind of adding in some shadows here. And we're going to kind of be making them hard so that we can blur them and kind of see where we need to get at. Now, if you have no heckin' clue how to shade this, let's look at the spear example again. So with this spear, we can eyedrop this color. And if you want to know when to blur, we know that the light is most hardest over here. So if the light is most hardest over here, you're going to get this hard shadow effect as you see on our leg. But as we're going down, we can easily also blur this a little. And then that way the ball will be looking a little more like a spear. Now that looks nothing like a spear. What we can do is that we can also make it a little more saturated, because usually whenever colors are going from one form to another, they tend to change color like that. And let's add that over there. And then we can render this out a little. And then we can make that a little more saturated. Alright, and that looks a little more like a spear. Kinda. I mean, not really for the moment, but this should be pretty much the concept you should have in your head. Maybe if we do that. I guess so. Anyways, if you have no clue what the heck I'm talking about, so instead of just trying to shade shadows like this, we want to add a little bit of saturation. So instead of keeping it dead still like this, we'll take this color, we'll make it a little more saturated, and then we can have the colors changing over there. And because in real life, or if we look at the art over here, we can see the colors kind of getting a little more saturated at times. Let's see. Here we go. So if we look at Sonic's eyes, it starts from this color, obviously. And then if we go over here, if we were to go to the most extreme color, it would go over here. Now what I'm trying to convey is that instead of just taking these two colors and then like going down a little bit like this and not making it saturated, let's actually change that up a bit and go to extreme darkness, go to extreme lightness. Instead of doing that, we'll take a more saturated color, as you can see here. Or we can find ourselves, like from dark, we go a little more saturated over here and over here, and then we make it a little more saturated. And as you can see, there's a clear difference. This looks more dead inside, and that looks a little more lively inside. You probably can't exactly see it that well here, but that is another detail that Mitara has probably used throughout this art piece. Saturatedness, add some. So, going back to our shadow layer, we're going to kind of render it a bit. I'm going to kind of render its skirts over here a little more by making them a little more softer. And of course, do a bad job, because you can always clean it up later. And then over here, we're going to kind of have more soft shading because it's not really, yeah, her focus, yeah, I don't know. The lighting is a little more softer because it's more away from the light. And then we're going to, so let's see. Can make that a little more light over here. And then we could probably add on a little nose light over here. Maybe not. Anyways, now let's add a little more soft shadow over here. And we can make this go a little softer. And then a little softer over here. Alright, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to decrease the saturatedness. And we're going to do that thing I was talking about, making these a little more saturated. So instead of just taking this color and calling it quits here, I'm going to make this a little more saturated, make it a little more orange, no, like a little red. And then this is where we'll be adding hard shadows. Hard shadows, as you can see, have really emphasized our little spear over here, which are these hard covers. So that's exactly what we'll be emphasizing over here within the same layer. And usually I like to play around with the opacity over here so that it can make the art a little more balanced. Now, if you have no clue where to place hard shadows, we can look over here. As you can see, Sonic's got a hard shadow over here. Actually, this is a perfect example. This is a little darker, and that's a little more lighter, right? And that is how Mitara was able to emphasize hard shadows. So, here is a hard shadow, and then here is a light shadow. But whenever you have hard shadows, they really wanted to emphasize how the lighting would react over there. So let's continue. Multiply, and we're going to be emphasizing hard shadows. You kind of want to put these all over the place or wherever you feel like it. We can always clean that up later. Alright, now, next thing we're going to do is add the reflectance, which is going to be fun. So we'll create another layer and add a reflectance. So it seems that Sonic does have a reflectance, which is this little beetle bug or something. Our character over here doesn't really have a reflectance, so what I could do is I'm going to put something under her layer, make something blue. Actually, no, let's just do red, because I can. And then she could have this little red box I'm making her as a reflectance. Color reflectance, more specifically. Little triangle. And give that a little bump so it doesn't look like she's on a flat surface. Alright, now we're going to create a new layer. And we're going to grab a red and start adding in reflectance. So make it decrease and see how the light is reflecting off of here. That's exactly what we want to do here. For this, we know that this is going to be black, so let's make it a little more lighter and have that color reflect off over here. Again, I'm not using some special clip mode for this. It's literally just me painting over. And painting over is what it will allow us to correct this a little more here and there. And I'm a little stuck here, so I'll look back to Sonic's lighting. We can see he uses that sort of light blue. And that's probably where we can add in a skin color like this. Or maybe a little lighter blue over here to show that she's like out in the white background to emphasize that better. Oh golly. Then we can correct the eyes here by making that a little darker. Okay, and then, And then let's focus on the eyes, because that's really going to be the fun part. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to set it to multiply. And I'm going to eyedrop this and make this a little more, let's see, darker. And we're going to, actually, we're going to set this to normal and add on to what we already had here. We're going to just kind of make this a little more curvy-like, because she's in the shade, duh. And as you can see, it's kind of blurred down there. So I'm going to add a new layer and just blend this in a little more. Make it a little saturated while I'm blending it in to really give it a nice look. And then we're going to add reflectance, as you can see over here. So Sonic's got some reflectant eyes based on the skin color. And we can also do the same over here based on that skin color. So we just do a streak of eyedropping this. And that should be good enough to give her a streak. Right. And now if you're still not satisfied, actually we could make this a little harder. Alright, we could kind of play around with the lighting over here if you're still not satisfied. But usually, I'm not satisfied. I want nice lighting. And that's going to be our reflection over here. We're going to add a new layer, and we're going to make some of the pupils white. So let's do that. Let's add one over here. Now for this pupil over here, I don't want it to be that opaque, so I'll just cut this out. And I'll paste it, and I'll just do this to show that, hey, it's not really in front of the light anymore. Now we're going to add some more details, and those would be details such as making the eye look a little more 3D. We're going to add a new layer. We're going to eyedrop this and make that way over here, a little more blue. It depends on the color of the light, so because this includes white lighting, I will do one of these numbers. Alright, it's in this color, and we're going to just draw an oval over here. And then we're going to make little shapes on it. You can do this, you can do this. Anything to show that, hey, her eyes aren't flat or anything. Then we're going to kind of erase this. Because, again, intensity and concentration. And we're going to kind of blur it a little. Might want to increase opacity on that so that it doesn't look a little off. And then we can have our little eraser brushes over here. And then, yeah. Decrease opacity. And then boom. That is how we kind of get it to be a little more shinier and eyeball-y. Hee. Alright, now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint over this more. As we can see, the light actually hardens over here a little. So I'll be taking you, and I'll just be hardening the light over here. And then it's actually a little more beamy and light, so we're going to take this and do one of these numbers. And then to actually make it look like it's in frame, we're going to make it a little desaturated. So let's look back over here. It's a little more desaturated over here. And then we can kind of just go over here and create a little, because see how it's fading out over there? We want to do the same over here. Blur. We're blurring it. And that's how we can kind of make it quote-unquote glowing. Same thing goes over here, except we want to kind of do something a little more weaker because it's not near the sun much anymore. Let's not do that. Make this a little more pink and then go on the outlines of these and blur it to make it look like it's actually there. And that is how we get that nice lighting you probably see a lot in anime pictures that we learned from here. Yippee! Alright, now we're going to do the same over here. Actually, let's detail our face a little more. I'm going to grab my orange, make it a little more lighter. And work on my nose. For the nose, that's a great question. We're just going to do what we typically do. A pink highlight over there and do that. And then, boom, it actually looks like she's in 3D now. Yippee! Alright, now we're gonna try adding a new layer, and then we're going to be adding something blue because the sky is kind of white and bluish. We're going to be adding a little decreasing opacity, a little something over here, and then when we decrease it, it kind of looks like, hey, she's a little more in the picture. We can also see this in the Sonic art. Where it's a little red over here because of his skin reflecting onto it. Actually, this could be a little more, let me correct that using the Sonic picture, because that should probably be a little more skin color like, since all that is reflected is just her skin color. That's literally it at the end of the day. Alright, so now I'm going to just make a few more corrections. Because I could also do another thing where I take this color and I just kind of dibble-dabble like this. And then that kind of looks like, hey, she's in the light. Hallelujah. Yeah, it kind of creates cool light effects on her. But that's not my point. That's not my vision. Alright, so now we're going to do something to her eyes. We're going to take this and then we're going to make it a little more lighter. Somewhere over here. Over here. No, over here. And then we're going to do that. This is to emphasize that her eyeshadow is, I don't know, what eyelashes also have value. So we'll play around with the color of this, kind of make it a little more light, or the color it needs to be, maybe a little more brownish. And then boom, it actually doesn't look like she's in 2D anymore. Yippee! So I want to add a little more detail. I could add a little more of her eyeshadow detail like this. Or not. Maybe we should keep it simple like this. And now, we're just going to add on another layer and figure out more things to shade on her. Which I will be figuring out slowly and for surely. Oh gosh. So let's make this a little more saturated and fix the lighting over here, so that we can get this little effect I created on her skin. Let's make that dark to show that her shadows they're not soft entirely. So make it fade, like with some opacity if you want like that little fade look, and don't make it with opacity if you just don't want that. And because our light's coming from here, we could easily lasso this over. And we could go like that, and then like this. And we could create that little lighting effect. Grab the airbrush and do this. Actually, let's start out with this color first. Grab the airbrush, do this. My bad. Grab the airbrush and do that. And then grab this color and then start just doing that. Or not. I mean, sometimes I like doing this, sometimes I don't. Let's see. Let's actually make this a little like airbrushy like that. And then we could grab this color and then mayhaps. I guess that looks nice. This is why we continuously create new layers so that we can always correct our shading. And then I guess I could fix this a little more further by doing what? Further by doing this. Alright. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some reflectance here. That is probably certainly not reflectance, but I don't care. Do that little thing over there. Now we're going to add more detail. Ah, yes. Add a new layer, and then we're going to start detailing the skirt now that we're done with the face. Skirty time. So usually for skirts, I just do one of these things to give them detail. And then, oh golly, I'm doing one of those mistakes. Ah, okay, and then we want to do that. And then, we give it a darker color to show that it has volume and depth. Okay. And really, I'm scribbling this all over here because, again, I could just clean it up easily later. And then we're going to give it some light. And with this, I will do something a little different. I'm going to grab that, clip it, set layer, add, do the same thing I did for the face, make it a little white-ish like that. Oh, my bad. Make it a little peachish like that. Make this the most hardest and light. Let me just erase that right now and do this. That was not great. Okay, now we can get better gradients. And then we're going to take our really light pick thing, 1, and then just increase it as we go. Decrease it. Oh boy, we have a skirt. Yeah, we have a shaded skirt now. I kind of don't like this, so we can just take half of that. Okay, and then we could paste that on there and give this a little more hardness. And then boom, we have made a difference. We have made a difference in life, in society. Now we're going to add color reflectance. Obviously, the carpet's red, so we give it a little bit of red. Over here. We don't give it much red over here. It's not going to be that red forever. And then we're going to kind of switch the color over up to here. Because of the white sky. Okay. Now we're going to take you and we're going to cut and paste you because, again, the concentration is a little less on you. And then boom, it actually looks like it's 3D a little. Yippee. Then we're going to grab another layer for the trillionth time. Take this and do that. Instead of doing something like this, we're not going to do that. We're just going to do that. I also like to emphasize her little bow over here. So I'll just kind of draw out with my lights over here. And boom. That went decently well. And now we're going to do something. And that something is, I don't know, because at this point, that's when we look to the Sonic art for reference. So his shoes are clearly defined here. Let's do one of those things. Let's grab red here and define them like this, a little lighter. Define the shadows. And after that, that's a great question. Oh, right, we make it more saturated. Yeah, we grab this. And then, boom, we really just went out and defined it. This is not good. Okay. That is where I shade this. This is such a great tutorial. Light's gonna be hard in here because it can be hardened. Is the lights more near there? Yes. What do I do next? I have no clue. So I believe the next route of action that I have to do is a line art. Because, yes, line art. I don't know why we're adding line art, but we're adding line art because we're adding line art. Usually for this, I usually like to make this black. And I just like doing this to show that this is a 2D character. Because I am bad at this. I am bad at tutorials. We're going to do that. It probably shouldn't be that dark. So then we'll just make that a little red. It's just the worst tutorial made. You make that a little black. And then we're going to take you and then take that and then, oh yeah, make it a little more darker like that. Oh yeah. Yeah. And then we're just going to, I guess you could say this is where I'm adding details with no good explanation here. Because I'm like so good at this. And we're gonna take that. Oh golly. That is not what I want. That's still not what I want. And I'm probably messing up the colors here again. And then this is where, oh golly, this is where I'll take another layer. I'll do one of these numbers. Yep, just to make it look more 3D. Yes. That does not look 3D whatsoever. Yeah, anyways, I'm really good at this. Yep. I think we're good. No, we're not good yet. I'm gonna go to the first layer, disable all of that, and add a new layer. I drop it because it's lighter down there, so why should I not do that? It's got a gradient. Yeah, it's got a gradient. Make it a little more saturated over here, because I love gradient shifts. What? And then we're going to do that. She looks very insane till I do this. That did not fix anything. I feel like that didn't fix anything. I don't think it fixed anything. Nice. Now, the thing to cherry on top of all of this really bad tutorial, is to create a new layer. Make this gray, because I'm so great at explaining shading. Make this fade watercolor. This. You do this. We reline it again. What was the point of that? And then we just take that, actually, unclip it. And then we just make this multiply because I'm magical. we make that multiply. And then we make that a little more lighter. Oh my gosh. We did it. We did it. We did it. I'll make this a little lighter. And then boom. You got a nice little totally 3D little, I don't know, star. Yeah, that was not helpful. I know, right? Okay, clipping, multiply. Wait, not multiply. I don't need multiply. I could just use normal mode. Do one of these. Oh gosh, do one of these numbers. I'll just unclip it and do this. Yep, that seems nice. That seems really nice. Yeah. Anything else? Yep. It's where we take our little boots and we just miraculously do this. Because I'm really good at shading. Like, that is no joke. And then we do this. Take it all the way to the bottom. And do that. This is not to emphasize that it is gray down there. It is to emphasize the areas of reflectance. I guess it's to emphasize that those shoes are white and drip. Anyways, I have no clue what this tutorial was. If you're still watching this, I applaud you. But we're going to take another layer and we're going to set it to add mode. And we're going to make this a little more brighter. Because I can. Okay. Do that. And that looks very nice. How long did it take me to make this? An hour. Thank you for watching this tutorial. If you have made it this far, good for you. If you learned something, that's nice. Have a nice day.